recently we did like an overview of the JonBenét Ramsey case, past theories. We got a lot of comments about it.
Yes.
You know, because there's clearly some of you out there that really know this case and know it well. So I want to read a couple of those comments and shout out to you guys for knowing your stuff with it. Because you guys said some stuff I didn't know. One comment was that the Ramseys, and this is from Janice Scott, she said, the Ramseys hosted a party and lots of neighbors were in their home. We did say that. So they saw the layout. Apparently, a man that rented a room from the Ramseys' elderly neighbors came to the party. The Ramseys were generous and innocent and let strangers in their home because of the holiday. And also, JonBenét did not wet the bed that night. Her mom got up early because they had an early flight. Now, actually, I do think she actually wet the bed because I think they found clothes that she changed out of.
In a sweater or something, right?
And changed into. I think that was the claim. But I'm almost... I think there's a chance that you're right. Because in no interviews, and I watched a ton of interviews of the parents, at no point did they say they got up in the middle of the night to help her change. That she wet the bed that night. Maybe there were clothes out from a previous night where she wet the bed, or somebody else was there.
Yeah, and helped her change.
Yeah, because they did find fibers of that cord that was around her neck in her bed. Or was it fibers? Yeah, and there were fibers, I think, from her bed on the cord or something like that, too. But they also... Here's a big one, okay? A lot of people really believed it was the parents. A lot. And the police pretty much, if you want the rundown of the case and everything and all the different theories, go check out the last video. We're going to like go more into the evidence and the information and like, you know, dig a little bit deeper into the theories.
Yeah.
So, the one thing that I think is kind of weird is the fact that even though they could never find the duct tape, the roll of duct tape, the piece that was on her mouth, even though they could never find that roll anywhere in the house.
No way.
Yeah, there was no roll of duct tape, but there was duct tape on her mouth.
What?
Fibers from her mother's sweater were on the duct tape and like all over her. In the garage, like the cord of the garage.
So strange. I swear, this case is like an onion. You think you got it.
It absolutely is.
And then all of a sudden there's this other really weird, unexplainable information.
Want to hear something else weird?
Huh.
So a lot of people believed that there somehow was an accident or somebody lost their temper, that it was somebody in the house. Like that's been the running theory for a really long time. Well, that would, if Burke had done it, for instance, say the theory about him waking up, eating pineapple, JonBenét steals a piece, and he gets mad and hits her in the head with the flashlight or whatever, and then the parents stage it. That was the thing, is that it was staged. Well, not only do you have the sweater pieces, okay, the mom's sweater, but you also have the fact that the duct tape was placed on her mouth after death, most likely, because there was no sign of it moving around or her struggling, because there was a perfect impression of her lips in the duct tape, which indicated to them that there was no moving around, that it was most likely put on after she died.
Oh, man. That is weird.
It is weird.
But no duct tape roll in the house?
And no duct tape roll in the house, but... You know where they did find duct tape that was just like what was on her mouth?
Huh.
At the housekeeper's house.
Okay.
And
that's super strange.
The housekeeper had made comments, which another person commented and talked about this, the fact that I didn't bring up the housekeeper, and I did look into her more. apparently she was asking for a $2,000 loan like a week or two before the murders, and also had made comments about like being, are you guys worried that she would ever get kidnapped because she's so pretty? And I think they rejected the $2,000 loan, possibly.
Whoa.
And the housekeeper would know his bonus, which was on the ransom note.
Oh, man. That's wild.
So, yeah, the housekeeper thing is super weird. Apparently, she tried to write a book about it, too. Her statement was taken, I believe, at the grand jury, and I'm pretty sure she tried to point towards the parents.
I mean, I wonder if there's some kind of resentment there because of how much money they had and, you know, what her financial status was.
And the loan?
Yeah, she's asking for $2,000. She's close enough to have insider information into what his bonus was, trying to point fingers at him. I don't know. I think in any situation like that, what I would automatically go to is like, what evidence is there? Not opinion. What evidence is there from her?
So clearly the actual murder of JonBenét was brutal and horrific.
Yep. Yeah.
You know,
it was awful.
Absolutely. But I don't think it's weird. What it looks like to me is like a pedo.
Yeah.
You know, with some crazy, weird perversions.
Mm-hmm.
But it always goes back to the ransom note. The ransom note is always the monkey wrench thrown in that throws off every single theory. Apparently, the housekeeper also had a pen and paper just like what Patsy had at her own home, which is another weird thing.
Yeah. That is strange.
Yeah. Super strange.
But again, I think the housekeeper, though, the only way that would even be a realistic option is if they had some kind of pedo urges. Otherwise, I do not ever see a completely normal person harming a child in that way to set something up. I don't see it.
I know. It's like out of this world crazy. And the facts are, the strangling happened while she was alive. There were fingernail marks in her neck, like she had tried to pull it away. And another fact is that her being hit in the head happened while she was alive.
Yeah.
So this whole theory about like Burke and the pineapple, to me, doesn't make sense. Yeah. How would that happen? If he hit her in the head and she died, and they tried to stage it with the strangling, she would have had to have been alive fighting back, and they would have known she wasn't dead.
A lot of the comments I read that believe he had something to do with it didn't talk about that, but that's a really good point. That's a really good point. He couldn't have done it. It's impossible that he could have done it while having the marks on.
He was 9 years old.
Yeah. I mean, the age doesn't matter. I think realistically, at his age, he could have done it with something that would have given him the leverage to be able to do it. Like, is it possible? Yeah, it's absolutely possible.
To just hit her in the head,
Is it probable? I don't believe so,
Not
because then her life would have ended right there, and it didn't, with evidence of the fingernail marks and things like that. So the only way that would be possible is if the abuse continued after that, and I just don't see that being the case in this situation.
And I agree with you. And the whole thing with the pineapple is that it wasn't just pineapple found in her stomach. It was an assortment of, from what I'm seeing, it was an assortment of fruit.
Okay.
Like I believe it said, I have a note here somewhere, but it was like grapes. It was different things. It wasn't just pineapple.
Okay. Okay.
And they had dinner at a friend's that night. Like, it could have just been her dinner. It could, like, that could throw the whole pineapple theory out of
the
out
situation
completely. Like,
and,
she went to dinner that night.
Yeah, and that's the downside about a case like this too, where the crime scene wasn't controlled, because we have so much evidence that we don't even know what's evidence and what's not. So then when you're trying to theorize and come up with a realistic possibility of how this happened, almost all of it can be thrown out the window. Almost all of it can be included, which just stimulates bias for who you personally feel like could be guilty based on what you're seeing from them as a person.
And the whole thing with the sweater, her mother's sweater fibers being all over everything. When John carried her upstairs, JonBenét's body, okay, the mother laid on top of her. Literally laid on top of her.
That's strange.
And was distraught.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like a mother laying over the daughter, like freaking out. She was distraught.
Got it. Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, my baby. And was like on top of her, holding her.
Mm-hmm.
How could that not explain the fibers?
You know, somebody mentioned something too where they were saying, so I heard two different theories here. I had one person who said, look, the parents didn't do it. And the reason why I believe they didn't do it is because on the during the 911 call, she doesn't know who it's from when the 911 operator asks who it's from, okay? And then she doesn't even know how to pronounce it, like she didn't even get that far in the note, which makes sense because, like, what's going to cause the emotional hiccup or volcano, whatever, you know, a huge emotional response is just going to be that first bit, that first chunk, and then you're going to have a hard time comprehending the rest of that. Now, I also heard someone else say, dude, it's totally suspect that she didn't know the details on that note. Like, because you don't, when you're reading it, you don't know if your kid's alive or not. So you would be reading the rest of that note, like, very intently. I don't know. I think that could go either way.
Yeah, I
think that could go either way.
I don't agree with that. I think maybe some people, like maybe your brain works that way, but in a intense, emotional, scary situation like that, I could totally see myself just briefly reading it and being like, oh my God, and calling 911 like, and not knowing. I got the idea. I don't know every little detail, but I'm going to get help here as quick as I can.
Absolutely.
And then we'll figure out the details.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, I mean,
I think it could go either way, though. I really do. I see both ways, and that's why it's important in these cases that, you know, the story about the Idaho 4 we just talked about, where you got to be so careful with your bias in these situations. This is one of them included, man.
This is 100% one of those cases where people are extremely biased with what they believe happened, either an inside job or the intruder theory. And I mean, I lean towards intruder, but there is weird stuff. Like, okay, so one of the big things for people was the SA, okay, the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
So the paintbrush was used.
Yep.
And people were saying that there was some kind of evidence of long-term SA. I can't find anything to support that. I read the entire autopsy report, like the legitimate autopsy report. Now, I did find out the coroner after that had some kind of pediatrician person come in and look at what was going on to determine if they believed there was SA. They said they thought so with, you know, the paintbrush, but they never, from what I saw, which if there's contradictory evidence, please let us know.
Absolutely.
Because I can't find it, that they never said anything about there being long-term.
Sure.
They literally said...
Well, that's good, because I read a comment like that. I was like, oh, no.
I heard that, and I mentioned it in our last video because I heard it, but I never found any evidence for it. And I still haven't now. They said there was no scarring.
Okay.
There's no scars down there.
So, I mean, that's good.
So, I mean, and the pediatrician was questioned that had seen JonBenét for many years and said they never saw any sign of it.
Okay, so that's really good evidence. That's really strong evidence. You know, I think one thing that is really spooky for people to accept is the idea that somebody could have been in the house. That is a very scary idea. I read multiple comments where people are like, no way, dude. Was there somebody in the house for like a long period of time? No way did they have people over and were serving, you know, wine and all this stuff, and somebody could have been downstairs and them not know it. And look, do I wish that that's not possible? All day long. I don't even want to consider the idea of someone being able to hang out in a house without them knowing. However, we have contradictory evidence of that, and you can just go on YouTube and search people living in other people's homes without them knowing. I mean, people have been in other people's homes for months at a time. Now,
Yes,
that's
they
a
have.
huge coincidence. You know, they would have to be in just the right spot where somebody wouldn't look or whatever, but it has happened. So with as big as their house was, how do we know there wasn't dark spots? Dark enough for them to be able to hear someone's coming and they go hide somewhere. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And see, here's the thing.
Homeless.
I've watched the interviews, okay? That wine cellar was not, that's just what they called it, okay? It was a junk room. They never went down there. That was not a basement. Like, yes, they had a train room. They never went down there. It was pretty much just storage.
So it was a wine cellar that wasn't being used as a wine cellar.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. So anyway, now you also have the two marks on her back and the side of her neck, or actually it's her jaw, I believe.
Okay.
See, these marks, people have theorized could have been Burke's train cars because they align, but that doesn't make any sense, okay? And here's why. It makes sense it's a stun gun. Because they've done experiments on pigs with stun guns. The marks are identical to what's on John. It's those, JonBenét. It's those two marks, and they have like a dark, like almost like burnt look to them.
Yeah.
Like they're dark and kind of black.
Yeah.
That's a stun gun.
Yeah.
That's identically what it looks like.
Snapping an electricity and burning that area. Yep.
That is exactly what it looks like. It's identical to all the images I've seen of wounds from stun guns. There's been extensive research done on it. I feel like it's not even a theory at this point. It's not possible, I don't think, for it to be Bert's train cars, unless they're electric in some way and could have shocked her.
Yeah, and also though, like that, there's a big jump between Burke getting angry. Like any young kid out there can get angry, and let's say they have a golf club or a bat in their hand and they swing it out of frustration, not to hurt, but out of frustration, and it hits another kid. And I could see an accident like that happening all day long. I think that's totally plausible and realistic and everything. But if that is now a train car too, now we're hopping on like continued abuse there. That is very different. I personally haven't came across a kid that would do that, see another kid get hurt, and then continue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that just seems like a stretch to me, you know? But with how many people talked about that in our comments, I felt like we needed to at least touch on it to see what kind of evidence is out there and at least create a platform for you guys to give us some more evidence than if you have it in regards to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so the detective I was telling you about earlier is Lou Smith. 3 generations of his family have continued to work on this. Okay?
Wow.
So his daughter and her daughters, I believe.
Okay.
And when he died, he gave them a suspect list and said, you know, a process of elimination, basically, and like, you will have who it is. He believes that the person who did it is on his list.
Okay.
And he wholeheartedly believes it's an intruder.
Yeah.
He proved by going to the house and crawling through that window in the basement himself that somebody could have came through it. Then people go back and talk about the cobweb. Dude, spiders can make a cobweb in like an hour, okay?
Yep.
Like, who's to say when that cobweb was there, when it was created? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks dirty or whatever. It's a freaking basement. I don't know what to tell you. But that window is not as tiny as I thought it was when I started hearing about it. And get this. So, the whole reason that hole was in the window is because the father, John, got locked out and he literally knocked it out. He broke it himself to get into the house, and he had forgotten about it and hadn't fixed it because they never go down there. And they hid a key under a rock out front of their house. The key was missing.
No.
The key was missing when this happened.
So it has to be an intruder.
There is somebody that they know that did this, in my opinion. Whoever did this knows them and knows them well. Knows them well enough to know their Christmas bonus. Knows them well enough to know where they hid a key, or it was somebody watching very closely.
Yeah, or a homeless person that was in their house that could hear conversations.
Yes.
I just am blown away by the evidence of the, what's his name, Gary or whatever?
Oliva or
yeah.
Oliva or whatever.
Olivia or whatever.
I think it's Oliva or something like that.
Being at the memorial, being in the state and that city at that time, very close to the house, even though he had lived in other places in the U.S., like, those are major coincidences. Major
Here's my theory. I agree. Here's my theory if he's the one that did it. I think he saw JonBenét at the parade. You know, maybe, I mean, she was literally on a float in the parade, the Christmas parade. Saw her. He was connected to a church, saw them maybe going in their house, and saw the broken window and started staying in there. Staying in their house, maybe listening to conversations, and when they leave for the day, snooping around.
Yeah.
And he concocted this plan and thought, well, I could assault her, like, maybe, here's what I actually think may have happened, is he is a pedo, okay? So he thinks, maybe I can get some money out of them. Maybe I can get some money out of them. Maybe he actually planned the ransom. Maybe he legit planned it, and then once he had her, he's a pedo. He couldn't help himself. And then he really hurt her. Strangled her, realized, oh my gosh, like, I can't do this, and finished it.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's a realistic
possibility. Because he's homeless. Why wouldn't he, like, sneak into somebody's house and hang out in there, and he's obsessed with JonBenét, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a possible theory, too. It could just go so many different ways.
Well, the parents believe somebody was in their house. Like, when they, like, was waiting for them to get back. They believe someone was in there, and I've watched the interviews. They believe someone was in there waiting for them to get back, waited for them to all go to bed, and then snatched her. That is what they believe happened.
Interesting.
I will say with the parents, you know, there are things that struck me weird, like the pageants. And I think back in that day, the reason it was such a big deal is they didn't have toddlers and tiaras yet. They didn't have all that stuff yet, okay? The optics of it looked strange to a lot of people. But also, yeah, it was kind of inappropriate in some aspects.
Yeah, when comparing it to today.
It felt very exploitative, okay?
Yeah.
It felt like they were exploiting their child, and yeah, I think that was putting her in a crappy situation. But the mom is a pageant queen, okay? And contrary to what people might think, JonBenét enjoyed it. There was a girl who literally competed with her and said she loved it. She had so much fun going up there and wanted to perform. And her dad said it too, even though he doesn't like the pageants. He's spoken out against them actively. He said she was a performer and loved to perform. She loved it. So it's the mom and the daughter enjoying this thing together. Like, maybe that's the only way she learned to perform, because her mom was a pageant queen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I get it. I understand it. And I also think that a really important thing to remember is the amount of time that has gone by. You know, the more decades that pass, the more unacceptable what was going on back then will become. Because, dude, even pageants today make me feel awkward, but pageants back then were like no rules, man. They made them like little adults that was in. It's so strange.
It is weird.
Is so awkward.
You know,
looking back at those pictures, man.
I agree with you. And you know who JonBenét reminds me of? Just like a little more adult? Shirley Temple. When I watch her pageant tapes of her performing, it reminds me of Shirley Temple.
And Shirley Temple, well, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that is a whole nother story. But that is what I see every time I look at her. Just a worse ending, you know, a worse situation in the end. But
yeah,
or at least so I think. But also there's the suitcase that people talk about, that they feel like John staged all of this. He put that suitcase by the bottom window to make it look like somebody crawled in and out, because he's the one that found that and noticed that was weird. But the way it's placed is it's perpendicular, I think is what you call it, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like the wall's like this and the suitcase is like this,
yep.
instead of being flat against it, parallel,
yep.
where someone could actually step up on it. It would be so unstable to step up on a perpendicular suitcase to the wall.
Yeah.
You have much more chance of like falling. So people thought, oh, he probably staged that and was like doing it in a hurry. And also, like, cops go through this house. You know, John goes through this house multiple times, and nobody thinks to look into the wine cellar until like way later in the day. And that last time he goes to search, that's straight where he goes. And people thought that was weird. Now,
he could have been sitting and thinking, though, like chewing on it, like, have I checked
because it was locked from the outside. It was locked from the outside. So I think that was like, well, nobody ever goes in there. It's literally locked from the outside. But in a case where your child's missing, I feel like I would literally check every crevice. Every
single place, no matter how unlikely it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is a little strange. But you're also in a situation where people are panicking. Emotions are running hot.
They are.
Now, another thing is the detective that was there, which, by the way, I didn't know this, but all the cops left. Is it Linda? What was her name? Is it Linda Hart? Oh my gosh.
Names.
So
the
the detective that was there. I said her name in the last one. I'm blanking on it right now, and I don't have it written down. The detective that was there on the scene, it's a woman, and, you know, John's had a lot of issues with the way she handled things, obviously, like, clearly, and there's a reason for that, but when he brought the body up, apparently he set it down in the living room, and he looked at her, and he said, "Is she dead?" And she said, and like, she was like, "Yeah, she's dead." And she said when they looked at each other, she said in that moment, she did an interview, said this on national television, and wonders why the parents were so defensive. "I knew he killed his daughter." She said, "I had my gun holstered and I started instantly counting and wondering if I was going to be able to get out of there. Like, or if they were going to kill me too."
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Is that not crazy? She looked in his eyes and immediately just knew he's the killer.
I am blown away by that. And that she has something to worry about? Am I going to be able to get out of there?
So
Other cops were there by that point.
She picked them. Immediately, she decided they did it, and all the evidence after that was biased. That's super weird.
Yeah.
Like, basically, from what I've heard people saying online, is she was just extremely inexperienced. That's what it boils down to. And John said straight up incompetent in an interview.
Yeah, I get it. I've also seen where some other cops were trying to explain how the other officers that were supposed to be there to support her, like, kind of bailed on her. So she was inexperienced. They also weren't there supporting her. So she was trying to figure this out, manage this thing when she's probably never been a part of a situation like that. And let's be honest, she failed, you know? She's a human being, and there's the human condition. And but I'm just shocked about that interview. That blows me away that someone would go on national TV and say something like that.
A detective.
Oh, man.
I know. I totally agree.
Choo.
And, you know, the detectives didn't even arrive on the scene until 2 hours after the 911 call. And police were there, but detectives didn't come till 2 hours later.
Gosh.
So another thing is a flashlight supposedly not belonging to the Ramseys was found on the kitchen counter. But here's the thing. It sounds like they had a flashlight identical to it, and they didn't know where it was. And when they showed pictures to Patsy, the mother, she said, yeah, that looks like it, but it looks different. And they said, well, it's dusty because we fingerprinted it, so it's got fingerprint dust on it. And she's like, oh, okay. And then the next time they talked to her about it, she acts like she doesn't remember that at all, when that's literally like the suspected murder weapon. And you would think that would be like a big thing that would stick in your mind.
Yeah.
So that is weird.
Yeah.
Now, other things they found was a footprint. So in the wine cellar, they recovered a high-tech boot print, didn't match any of the shoes in the house, and a red pocket knife that supposedly did not belong to the Ramseys at all. And another shoe print was found. But I don't know what kind it was. Now, I know people have said the high-tech boot footprint could be police. It could be.
Okay.
Also, a partial boot print was found on top of a toilet tank in the northeast bathroom in the basement near a crawl space. A crawl space. Okay? You want to talk about where somebody can hide in your house in broad daylight and you would never know? A crawl space that connects to your basement is a good one.
Oh, no. Oh, so sketchy, you guys.
A neighbor
That's
found...
a scary thought.
You know what I've also thought about is, what if Gary Oliva, because I know people have said in the comments he was mentally unstable and obsessed with her. What if he was staying in their house and was obsessing over her, and he witnessed the murder, and because he's so mentally unstable, he thought he did it? What if he was a witness? And somehow his brain did some weird thing where he literally thought he did it.
That would be a twist of all twists. That would be wild.
Dude, this case is a twist of all twists.
It is.
This is like literally one of the greatest mysteries ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. I mean,
besides
yes.
Madeleine McCann and the Somerton Beach man, these are the three cases. Madeleine McCann, JonBenét, and the man found on Somerton Beach are three of the biggest mysteries I have ever encountered.
Yeah.
In true crime.
Yeah. It is wild. So yeah, sure. It's totally likely.
There was also a pubic hair found on the blanket that was never identified. Never.
Is it still in evidence? Why hasn't that been tested?
I believe so. I think they have all the DNA. She had She had DNA from 2 different people on her fingernails. She had DNA on her leggings. She had DNA in her underwear. Like, there was DNA all over her body, and that's what her father's fighting for, is to get the genealogy.
The rights, yeah.
Yeah, to do what they have done to catch a lot of people in recent years. And the cops don't want to release it.
Which is insane.
The family's fighting to get Boulder PD off of the case. Because they're still interfering even now.
Oh, man, I wonder where that first lady is. The cop.
Yeah, I don't know where she is now.
It'd be interesting
I don't
to
believe
look
she
that
works
up.
there anymore, though. I don't think she does.
If I was her, I'd probably move away, too.
So, also, there's a couple of a palm print found on the area of the wine cellar door where the body was later found. And that hasn't been identified either. None of the DNA has been identified. They've tested against the Santa guy, okay, the super weird Santa guy that was obsessed with her.
Yeah.
They've tested Gary. That wasn't his DNA. They've tested it for the parents, wasn't theirs. Like, every big suspect in this case have all pretty much been cleared by DNA.
Yeah, but how much could one of the other DNA samples be one of their DNA? You know what I mean? Could DNA have gotten there from a different way that didn't have to do with the case or the crime, and they're just testing the wrong one? Because we're talking pubic hair, we're talking 2 skin samples, we're talking all kinds of stuff everywhere. The palm print, like...
So the daughters of the guy, Lou Smith, they said the DNA looks like, at least one of them that I read, looks like it has to be a white man who is right now over the age of 40, probably older.
Okay.
So that's all I have for that. Like, that's the most information we've gotten out of the DNA, is that it's all male.
Yeah. And
they're talking about a white guy who's over 40 right now, probably, like, pretty old. So, so there's some neighbor accounts, which I mentioned these in the last one, but what I didn't know was this. So somebody heard a scream in the early morning.
Okay.
Well, there was also a metal clinking sound. And Burke's bat was found out front. Like, just out front on the sidewalk, like in front of the house. That's super weird.
Very strange.
But Burke also said it could be nothing because he leaves it outside all the time. But what was that metal clinking sound then?
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to think of that. But neighbors also reported seeing a dark van parked across the street from the Ramsey home on the evening of the murder. And you also have accounts of a lady at one of the pageants saying a guy came up to JonBenét and was being super suspicious. Some strange man, and took off and was asking something about her mom. And then the mom actually said at the parade a guy came up to the float talking to JonBenét, and it was super weird. It made her uncomfortable.
That's interesting.
That's what's hard about this, is there's so many creepy men surrounding this little girl.
Yeah.
So many.
I agree. I
feel like there shouldn't be this many suspects.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but there is so much evidence, and so much of it is I feel so contradicting.
It is.
But I think when it comes down to it, for me, there's some weird stuff with the parents, okay? There's some weird stuff. But I feel like because it was painted this way from the beginning, okay, that detective decided it was them. Yeah. And she picked all the evidence to match it. You know, you have a paper bag and rope found that didn't belong to them that was used to make the garrote, found under a guest bedroom bed. Mm-hmm. You have all this outside stuff that's being found there, yet nobody cared about it until later when the case was cold.
Yeah. Because it didn't matter at the time. Yep.
And I just think there's no way that it could be the parents, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll put
I wanna
together
see
a
that
theory
suspect
to
list.
like see if it's possible to be the parents. So
I mean, I think everything disproves the parents.
yeah, I mean, I think one benefit of our channel is that we're unbiased, so we're going to be able to bring theories of possibilities. I mean, most of the time I don't even share my opinion on what I think it is. I think it would be a good video to show how it could be the parents, how it could be the specific evidence that aligns with how it could be them, and then that gives you a basis to be able to compare the strength of the two theories. So
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
But they wouldn't need a stun gun for their own kid.
I agree. I feel like you're going about it like trying to prove why it's not the parents, when we should be looking at it trying to prove why it is the parents.
I mean,
And that doesn't make your opinion that it is the parents. That's just the theory of how it could be the parents, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is more, I think, about... I mean, I was covering it because I feel like the intruder theory makes more sense, and I wanted to explain kind of why it makes more sense. Like, I feel like the stun gun doesn't make sense for it to be the parents.
Yeah.
And there's so much, other evidence. There's just so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. I get it. I understand.
Now,
because I would present a theory giving evidence why it could be the parents, that doesn't mean I believe that.
I feel like the staging, like the evidence for the staging and him running around the house, like, and he was so involved in like searching and everything, that's a perfect setup for him to be able to stage everything.
Yeah.
So I do think that maybe from that angle that he staged all of it because he was so active in the beginning, you know, with like when it's the most crucial time, that I guess could make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard some stuff that makes the parents seem guilty, why it could be them. So
I mean, I think this is a good platform for you guys to tell us like the best evidence that you think you have for it being the parents, or the best evidence you think for it being an intruder.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think it just really comes down to that, inside or outside.
No, I agree. And then we'll be able to put together a video on the parents specifically. So, yeah. Let us know what you think. I'm curious what you guys know that's different than what we talked about in here. And let us know below.